This game is definitely better than Superstars. Currently, I'm playing on version 1.1.0, 2 weeks post-release. I've played 30 turns on every board, as well as played every board on Pro Mode. There are timestamps in the description for every board. Number 7. Mega Wiggler's Tree Party. This is a traditional Mario Party board, with the main gimmick being the changing track. The Wiggler moves if someone rings the bell through either a unique item or through the many happening spaces on the board. I think the item shop is a big issue on this board. It takes 26 spaces if you're lucky to line up both Wigglers, or about 32, 35, and 42 spaces to get back to the Koopa shop. That is the only shop with movement items on this board. You do have a choice to farm shop items. There's also a Koopa here that will give you 10 coins every time you pass them. The Kamek shop does, though, have a warp box. This means on average you'll be moving 10 spaces from either the double dice or the custom block, and the last 16 spaces you'll be moving without items. The shop hop box provides a choice, but it's only really good if it can be used if the star is nearby a shop. There's a 50-50% chance that you'll actually benefit from using one. Getting custom dice or double dice are a much stronger choice. The Kamek shop has creepy dice, the Chomp Call, Dueling Gloves, and all, in my opinion, make the game less enjoyable overall for the group. At the very least, both item shops include the board's unique item, the Wiggler Bell. The Wiggler serves as a way to skip a few spaces, and is sort of used to avoid the happening spaces with Piranha Plants. It also allows you to avoid the 2 Bowser spaces on the board. There's a random chance that if the Wiggler is moved, it will also become enraged. While the Wiggler is in its enraged state, red spaces along with 2 Bowser spaces will replace the spaces on the Wiggler. Nothing happens to the player on the Wiggler at any point if they are on the Wiggler while it's moving. The Piranha Plants located on the sides of the board will take coins away from you, and with each person that activates these spaces, the amount of coins you lose will increase. It starts with 5 coins and increases by 1 each time. Not a threat at all. When the Wiggler is on the left, it could save you 4 spaces from traveling, and it helps you avoid a Piranha Plant. I take this path every time unless a star is there. On the right, you have a more serious choice to make. You can either take the Wiggler and save 8 spaces, or take the path on the right and risk the chance time, Bowser space, and Piranha Plants. As a reward, you'll be able to shop at the Kamek shop and solicitate Boo. Okay, so the Kamek shop makes everyone miserable, and Boo is only valuable when you have enough coins to steal a star. I can't help but notice the dark greenery in this side of the board. Kind of a callback to Woodsy Woods' evil tree area. Maybe you should avoid going there. The last choice you have is the fork located at the top of the board. It takes 3 spaces longer, and you lose out on taking Wiggler, but as a reward you can land on an item space, 1 of 2 lucky spaces, or 1 of 2 positive happening spaces. The happening spaces here grant you a fair amount of coins. You have to pick 2 of 3 beehives. 2 of them will randomly grant 10 or more coins. 1 of them will contain bees that will stop your attempt. This is a much better reward than just a Kamek shop and Boo space. If Wiggler isn't there to allow you to skip, you should go up. Overall, this board has an incredibly slow pace and obvious choices. Number 6. Mario's Rainbow Castle. This board is a remake from the original Mario Party. What this board offers is done differently and actually better in other boards in this game. I of course mean the tower gimmick of the board. Roll'em, Raceway, and King Bowser's Keep both have arcs of the game where you mind game with your opponent how soon or how late you're gonna arrive at a certain spot on the board. The space of interest here doesn't ever move and grants the player either a star or a Zitar. The Zitar does nothing, but you're forced to pay 20 coins for it when you reach Bowser. The single item shop on this board holds it back. The rotating shop is a good idea, although I feel the tower turner item should have been in both Kamek and Koopa shops. It's a fun item to use, and it could turn the results of a game when it works. The randomness, however, of the tower turner item actually working and changing the tower makes it a poor choice over some of the movement items and even the warp box. Mushroom tickets are inexpensive and are the only multi-use item in the game. that can provide an additional 10 to 20 spaces of movement with its 5+ modifier. On the higher end, triple dice can get you where you need to be. Creepy dice work great to slow you down when Bowser is hovering over you, or you can buy a pack of creepy dice to slow down everyone else. I'm not saying that 20 coins are too much. We all know this game has a surplus problem. It's just that the movement items provide much more control and are much more satisfying to use. The happening spaces also provide a guaranteed opportunity to change the tower using custom dice blocks, albeit at the end of your turn rather than the beginning. It's actually sad that you can't buy the custom dice block here. The shortest route, the 32 spaces or so required to travel between shop visits, are among the most in the game, and that just creates a bad experience because even with the triple dice averaging 15 spaces, you go at least 3 turns averaging 5 spaces each without an item before making it back. If you're lucky, you'll land in one of the 3 item spaces and you go 2 turns without an item. Forks on the board does provide a chance to delay your arrival to the tower, and the one on the left has a boost space. If you're ahead in the stars at the tower, then it works as a risk-reward choice. You're risking losing the star to steal from someone else. If Bowser's at the tower, then really it's just a risk-reward option only balanced by the Bowser space on the boost path. Losing a star is devastating on this board, but after playing King Bowser's Keep, I'm feeling a little more willing to go down that path. If you lose someone else's star that you just stole, who cares? Trap item spaces do see a little more play here, since the board has a linear design. Coin traps can be purchased on the first half of the game from the Kamek shop, and they become star traps the second half of the game. They can be used in spaces leading up to Boo to further deter the player, although unless there are star traps, I don't think the other players will care. Overall, this board suffers from an incredibly slow pace and a lack of options. It does have some interesting item play. I think this board is better than Peach's and Yoshi's boards from Superstars. Number 5. King Bowser's Keep. This one let me down, but this is one I'd consider going back to. The board's main gimmick is that Imposter Bowser is on a loop in the middle of the board with many Bowser spaces and many different paths. The loop changes direction from either the happening spaces or from the board's unique item, Bowser's Byway Lever. The one other happening space on this board that does something different is connected to a red pipe that takes you from the back to the center loop. You can access anywhere regardless of the direction of the loop. As the game progresses, Imposter Bowser continues to add more spaces on the board, making it more risky to travel through. At the most, there will be 20 Bowser spaces on the loop and 4 regular spaces. Anything that's collected by Bowser spaces is placed inside the vault at the back of the board. The vault can be opened by correctly guessing 2-digit numbers independent of each other. If one of the 2 numbers is guessed correctly, it's permanently marked and someone would only have to guess the other digit to unlock the vault. As you can imagine, this creates a very chaotic and swingy game. Someone who is dead last can be boosted to first after getting lucky at the vault. I had a game with 4 stars in it. When the vault is close to being cracked, it becomes a race and the dynamic becomes similar to Mario's Rainbow Castle. So let's talk shops. This one's not as bad as the last 2 placing ones, but it's still bad. All shops have the Chomp Call, perfect for ruining friendships. The Koopa shop provides double dice, Payday double dice, pipes, and mirrors along with skeleton keys. The 2 Kamek shops provide creepy dice, mushrooms, dueling gloves, and a unique board item. Bowser Byway levers can foil someone's progress on the loop, or if you're in it yourself, it will save you a lot of time from having to backtrack. One Kamek shop is located at the beginning of the board, and the other is in the central loop. You can always buy from the beginning Kamek shop any item you want because the dry bones there gives you 10 coins when you pass start. My guess is that the board designers knew that it's vital to be able to buy a switch or a movement item at any time. So maybe you should pick one up. Movement's a big deal in this board. Getting stuck in the central loop can be devastating. Late game, Bowser buy levers can be used to trap players in the central loop. If they're caught without an item, they could spend a lot of time there. If that happens, they'll probably become too busy to play with you on any future games. The loop is very much risk and risk, being 24 spaces wide. The reward is reaching the branching paths at the end. There's no reason to stay in the loop. The spaces within the loop can reward you some coins, but they're only in increments of 3 to 10. Mecha Koopa rewards players with 6 coins upon its destruction, To end it, you need to roll a die, and that's how much damage you'll do to it. If you fail, it'll counter and cause you to lose 3 coins. On the other side, there's a gear with rewards that will grant the player whatever's facing them. It could be running from 3 to 10 coins. The bomb makes you lose 5 coins. There's already too many coins in this game, so I don't think it makes that much of a difference. It's not even worth looping again to be able to buy from the Kamek shop. You'll actually reach the other Kamek shop at the start of the board by at least 4 spaces sooner no matter what path you take. The best way to approach the loop is to either get out as soon as possible, or gamble by planning ahead and entering from the side that will allow you to go to the Kamek shop before getting out. There are 2 skeleton key gates. The one on the loop grants access to a boo, 2 item spaces, 2 lucky spaces, and 2 chance time spaces. This is actually huge, but the limited inventory space on the board makes holding onto that skeleton key a bit harder, especially when 22 to 26 spaces is the loop distance between the Koopa shop. The left path gives you a decision between movement or boo. You can forego the movement item from the Koopa shop and get a skeleton key instead to get to the boo anyway, but that's going to take you an extra 6 spaces to get back to start, and you're going to have 1 less movement item in your inventory. You may also take the path with the bullet bill cannons, which is 1 space shorter than the skeleton key path. Here, the happening spaces causes you to lose 5 coins, but the spaces among them, like the lucky and the item spaces, heavily outweigh that negative. If you're trying to see boo, the star space is the only reason why you would take the skeleton key route. In the right path, you have the choice between the boo and cracking the code. Boo requires a bit more planning because the difference in spaces required to warp back to spawn is a whopping 8. The branching path on the right has no shops and is much more of a drag to go through. You may burn all your resources to go to a branch on the right trying to get to that boo. A giant Mecha Koopa with 7 health is also on the right path, and it will grant you 15 coins if you succeed and make you lose 5 coins if you fail. Good decisions and good opportunities to gamble. In summary, this board has good short-term and long-term opportunities and decisions, but the swinginess is definitely not for everybody. Some decisions made on this board can also be very mean. I was hoping this board would be just as good as Horrorland because of the difficulty rating, but I was disappointed. I'd consider this board on par with Woodsy Woods. Number 4. Rainbow Galleria. This is another board that didn't meet my expectations. This is a non-linear board with the main gimmick being that the happening spaces correspond to a different shop within the mall. It ties into the unique item of the board, which increases the purchase price for all places for 1 player for 1 turn. Some of these shops allow for decent decision making. A superstore that sells super dual gloves, a super mirror swap, and triple creepy dice. A 4th place shop that gives the person in 4th some coins, along with the chance to buy a swap mirror, triple dice, and a 200% markup sticker. Custom dice with star traps. The gold shop sells payday double dice, payday triple dice, and the gold pipe. And there's a thrift store that buys back one of your items against your will. They'll pay you double whatever the item is worth. A boo space. And finally there's a boo bell shop that allows you to buy a boo bell that will allow you to call boo anytime you want. On the 2nd floor we have a Koopa shop with double dice, a markup sticker, a green pipe, a warp box, and custom dice. There's also a raffle shop on this floor that rewards you the more items you purchase throughout the game. I don't think the markup sticker is very powerful because of the excess coin problem in this game, but movement is very powerful. On the 1st floor, the starting area, there's a main loop, and there's a Kamek shop with creepy dice, mushrooms, and green pipes. Oddly enough, they chose this Kamek shop to have all their prices set at 1 coin. So, what's wrong with this amazing novel idea? Well, if you guessed RNG, you're right, but there's more to this. The spaces to get to the elevator on the 3rd floor from the Koopa shop is 20 spaces. If you try to get there from the beginning of the game, grabbing an item along the way, you go about 10 spaces without an item, or about 2 turns. If you try to completely walk the 3rd floor, that will increase to 49 spaces. To rub it in, there's 2 Bowser spaces up there. Say if you were able to grab 1 more item along the way, that's a whopping 29 spaces, or about 5 turns without an item. And that's being generous. Maybe 3 turns if you manage to land on one of the shops. You say, okay. So you clearly have to set up for that, right? Buy an inventory full of items before you go up to the 3rd floor. Alright, let's see how long that might take. The smallest loop that you can do is 12 spaces long, and that's the one on the 1st floor. They sell mushrooms for 1 coin each. Let's say you get lucky and got a free item. You made the loop twice. That would still take you about 24 spaces or about 4 turns. It may take you up to 10 turns just to get around them all once. If you take the elevator up to the 3rd floor, it'll still take you 29 spaces before reaching the Koopa shop on the 2nd floor. With a full setup, you can barely scrape by using all your resources up. At some point, strategy actually comes in. Think of this board like this. You have a chance to trade up 2 of your resources, one of them being a custom dice, making sure you land on the gold shop for a golden pipe, and using the other one to get through no man's land, which is what I call the 3rd floor. Completing the first half of the 3rd floor takes about 23 spaces before reaching the next shop. It can be done with 2 items, and it rewards you with a boost space, and if you have custom dice, a choice between the super shop or the 4th place shop. The super swap mirror allows you to choose who to swap places with and can be used to get someone stuck in no man's land. Pretty evil. Walking the 3rd floor is a long-term strategy that will probably take you 10 to 7 turns to do. The only freedom you'll have is if you happen to land on an item space. If you prepare for the second half of the floor, you'll be ready to take either route, so you'll have some decisions then. This strategy can be countered by players by placing trap spaces on the looping sections in longer games, so it's not totally broken. The major point of marketing for this board included the flash sale event, which happens every 5 turns, cuts the price of every item from every shop by half, and also cuts the price of the star in half. But since the economy of this game is broken, it really doesn't matter. Full stamp collection is actually one of the worst things you could do on this board. If you actively try to collect all the stamps without setting up first, you'll find yourself with no time to do anything with the coins you've earned. The reward is a 10 coin bonus for collecting all the stamps. The stamps on their own will actually give you 10 coins every time you pass start, but every time you do pass start, you'll actually be given a new card to get stamps with. It's really not worth trying to get all the stamps. You can get more coins from getting on the lucky spaces on the board. If you're really missing those 10 coins, I think it's better just to take the 3 extra spaces on the slightly longer loop on the 1st floor, get yourself your first item from Kamek, and immediately cash out. I've actually found myself cashing out every time I get to a stamp station, and that's because I've actually ran myself into the same stamp station multiple times in a game, and that seems a lot more frustrating to me, because you can only get 1 stamp per card per station. The lottery happening space can be a great way to get coins, but that in itself is a gamble. In summary, this board has some amazing ideas but questionable execution. This board is deceivingly luck based, and it takes too much time to set up. If just one of those shops was a passable space instead of a happening, I think it would have been much better. Imagine if the gold shop had super high markups like a 50 coin pipe available for sale. For anyone that passes by, it would be accurate to real life mall price gouging, maybe. Upon release, this appears to be many people's favorite board, and I want to believe those are the minority lucky people being loud about it. This board devolves to a few strategies: play it by moving slowly, or do one of the 2 long-term strategies, deviating whenever the star is convenient. I think this is the only board to benefit from Pro Mode. It cuts down from the setup time and allows you to reach the 3rd floor sooner. The smaller shop loop is 12 spaces or about 2 turns, 18 minutes if the math checks out. It also prevents players from farming because of the limited shop. It gives the players the choice right away to either pick the custom dice or the 1 coin mushrooms from the Kamek shop. Star traps are immediately available and can be used as soon as turn 2 thanks to the cellular shopper item. The limited inventory forces everyone to play a different role. 2 players in a game will be able to immediately trade their cellular shoppers for custom dice. Those custom dice will later on become golden pipes. The 2 players left out will probably choose to get movement items to get boo. Will the players with cellular shopper see the other players without cellular shopper and maybe push their luck to get 2 custom dice? This is the only board I will recommend trying Pro Mode on. The other boards either don't change or actually get worse. I recommend leaving Mario, Luigi, Rosalina, DK, and Yoshi out of the pool so they can be Jamboree buddies. it's gonna make this board a lot more tolerable. Play as either Peach, Daisy, Wario, Waluigi, or Bowser Jr. to make those unselected partners show up more. I think this board on party mode is on par with Woodsy Woods. On pro mode, I think it's on par with Horrorland. Number 3, Westernland. Now this is a board that I definitely see myself coming back to. It's a traditional Mario Party board that was remade from Mario Party 2. The main gimmick of this board is the train. Anytime you're walking on the railways, if you get hit by the train, you get sent back to start. Steamer tickets are the unique item of this board, and prices for them fluctuate from 5 to 10 coins. They can be purchased at the train station at the back of the board. The train moves between stations through either calling them or riding them, running over anybody along the way on the tracks and sending them back. If you arrive at a train station and the train is present, you can pay 3 coins to ride it to the next station. You can also pay 6 coins to ride it 2 stations away. There is, however, a twist. You have to hit a random block to determine what direction the train will travel. Pretty solid ideas. This board does have a bit of a shop problem. It takes 19 spaces to get to the front Koopa shop from the back Koopa shop, and it takes 36 spaces without and 24 with the skeleton key to get to the back Koopa shop. It takes 22 spaces to get to the Kamek shop from the back Koopa shop. It takes 32 spaces from the Kamek shop to get to the Koopa shop located in the back, but that can be reduced by taking the train. Thankfully, every shop on this board has movement items. The Koopa shop has mushrooms, double dice, warp boxes, skeleton keys, coin traps, and custom dice. The Kamek shop has creepy dice, mushroom tickets, payday double dice, swap mirrors, chomp calls, and coin traps. Once you start the game, you're immediately hit with a choice. The center of the board can only be answered through one side and exited by 2 sides, one locked away by a skeleton key. At the start, the player is forced to choose between the Kamek shop or one of the Koopa shops. The skeleton key from the Koopa shop allows you to skip one of the 2 Bowser spaces on the board. It also saves you about 12 spaces, but is it better than grabbing a custom block? There's also 6 spaces in a row of lucky and item spaces that will probably benefit you if you walk through the center. There's even a fork after the Koopa shop that will help you land on one of these spaces. The Kamek shop option includes a boo space, but it has the risk of you getting run over. Both paths take the same amount of spaces to get to the meeting fork, the fork right before the station. The fork right before the start of the board, and after the second boo, has the last couple of interesting, although situational decisions. The crossroad fork gives you the choice of either going back to start, or going back to the Koopa shop and boo using the skeleton key. It was a journey to get back there, but is it worth risking 2 chance time spaces? Is it worth risking the Bowser space in this loop? Another less obvious aspect about this fork is that if you're on the space right before the fork, you have an 80% chance of either landing on an item space or a lucky space when you roll the standard die. The Hootenanny is a good way to annoy everybody. It's located at the back of the board, and you could pay the Wiggler 20 coins to call everybody to be teleported there. It's kinda situational how useful it will be, but it's always really funny when it happens. The other spaces spread throughout the board make the train move. Don't be surprised if everybody gets run over after the Hootenanny. Being transported to the Hootenanny provides its own choices. For instance, you can ride the train and hit everyone there, or buy a train ticket and skip the train, and move on to the Koopa shop and boo space, all within 14 to 18 spaces. I wish the train didn't have a random chance of going one way or the other, but it's not too bad. The station on the top left is extremely powerful, because riding it there will always leave you by a station with an item shop and boo space nearby. It doesn't matter what direction it goes. Just know if you take the train, there's always a chance of you getting run over the next turn. You have a lot of choices to make. Overall, this board is worth many playthroughs, and it has a lot of interesting decision making, and some player interaction that isn't too mean. The only issue I have with this board is that the item shops are a bit too far from each other. I think this board is on par with Spaceland. Pro mode only changes how this board feels. I don't think it makes it better or worse. Number 2, Goomba Lagoon. A controversial pick. At first I didn't like this board. I went from really loving it to really hating it as I explored the meta. I see many of the discussions online rip this board apart, but hear me out. This board has a linear and conventional Mario Party board design with the gimmick of having a 2-turn cycle. There's a high tide and a low tide that changes the layout of the board. High tides force players to remain on whichever loop they were on. Low tides break loops and allow players to explore. This board is composed of 3 main loops with 2 more that are created during the high tide. This board essentially borrows elements from Horrorland and Mario Party 6 to create a dynamic board that takes a lot of planning and positioning to take full advantage of. 2 of the item shops exist on loops that only exist during high tide, allowing the player to plan ahead and make multiple shop purchases. The loops are 14 spaces, meaning that the player should be able to loop in about 2 to 3 turns. Those shops are both Koopa shops that include mushrooms, double dice, green pipes, shop hotbox, dueling gloves, and custom dice. The Kamek shop on this board can only be accessed through a happening space or through a long path from the starting island. The Kamek shop has a unique board item, the Tide Shell, which changes the current tide of the board. It also has creepy dice, warp boxes, chomp calls, coin traps, and plunder chests. Besides the 2 loops on the board with the shops, there are 3 other loops that exist no matter the state of the tide. I call those the farming loops. The island I call Lucky Island has 4 spaces entirely composed of lucky spaces. At first I thought Lucky Island was broken, but then I realized that it's actually balanced out by the other farming loop, the one located on the top left. It has 2 item spaces, 3 lucky spaces, and 1 happening space. But if you didn't realize, it also has an item shop along the way and a boo located right after it. The happening space in this loop also takes you to where Lucky Island would have led to, the path of the Kamek shop. If you push your luck too hard, you might miss out on talking to Boo. Speaking of pushing your luck, there's a Goomba fishing game here that you trigger by landing on the happening space. It's located on one of the temporary loops. You have the chance to fish out coins, and every time you do, it's a random amount that comes out. If you go over 15, then you lose everything. You could stop after any of your attempts, keeping the coins that you've received. So you have 2 interesting choices right off the bat. The other choices you have to make is how you're going to actually get from island to island. You have to think about what item you're using, during what point in the tide, and how well positioned you are to actually make your move. You should prep with at least 2 movement items before crossing into the volcano's linear path. Should you break away from your loops early to grab a star, or should you stay in the first loop of the board and see where the next star will spawn? Half of the star spawns on this board are actually only 12 spaces away from the first loop. The last 5 turns of a game need additional consideration, since you don't want to end up in some versus battle exploiting the same loop. The Kamek shop's coin traps and, in the second half, star traps allow a method to punish players farming from the same loops, and both loops have quick access to that Kamek shop. The volcano erupts anytime someone passes by it. It drops random entities, could be golden Goombas or lava bubbles. They're both spread out randomly around the volcano, and the golden Goombas grant the player 5 coins, while the lava bubble removes 3 coins. They only need to be passed by, so they can add up if you're moving fast. These enemies disappear after someone either passes by them or if the volcano erupts again. I think the quantities you lose from the lava bubbles are too small and doesn't matter in the long run. Farming from the loops gets you just way too many coins. Maybe it's better that way though. I want to believe that movement is the true economy of this game. So, how are you prepping for that volcano? The journey back from the volcano rewards you with a boo space and the chance to try Goomba's chess game. The chess game is very easy and pretty much guarantees any item you want from it. The loop for Boo is 33 spaces wide, but it has a Koopa shop between it. It's possible to load up and hit Boo twice before having to farm again. This board gets you running fast. Drowning people with tide shells is very satisfying, as it allows you to prevent people from getting to Boo, because ultimately, all paths funnel back to Boo. Lowering tides in the second half of the game can actually prevent people from farming golden pipes. This board lets you plan many turns ahead and has very strong item play. This is one of the few boards I was able to spend all the coins I earned. This is actually a board that suffers at the lower turn count, and I think that's why there's a lot of people online complaining about it. This board on a 30 turn game or a pro game is neither better or worse. My only issue with this board is that it could be a very solitaire experience. There's nothing preventing different players from farming the same loops early on. If they allowed players to buy star traps at the beginning of the game, like on other boards, I feel like this board would be the best in the game. Cellular Shopper only allows you to purchase from the Koopa shop, and if star traps were available there instead of the Kamek shop like on Rainbow Galleria, Pro Mode would feel completely different. Still, I think this board is a very unexpected treasure. This board is on par with Horrorland. Number 1 is Roll'em Raceway. This took me by complete surprise with how engaging it is. This is a linear board with a racetrack gimmick. When you pass the finish line, you gain 10 coins by talking to Koopa, and you'll gain 10 times n number of laps you've completed after that. So on the third lap, you'll gain 30 coins just by talking to Koopa. The other change this board has is that there's only 2 locations for the stars. They alternate between each other when someone buys a star. The happening spaces on the board all involve either moving you ahead or back on the track. The happening spaces on the metal plates move you only a few spaces ahead to their corresponding metal plate, but the one on the bridge, about halfway to the board, sends you to the space right before the lap line. And yes, that does count as a lap. There's a fork right before the lap line that makes you avoid talking to Koopa, but instead you can pay 10 coins at the pit stop. This will fill up your empty item slots with any movement items such as creepy dice, double dice, or even triple dice. Slightly down the path with the pit stop, there's a happening space that changes what the metal plate happening spaces will do. The Koopa shop also swaps into the Kamek shop. All the metal plate happening spaces, instead of sending you forward, will now send you back. And the board stays in this state for about 2 turns. The Koopa shop has green pipes, mushroom tickets, double dice, triple dice, custom dice, and the unique board item, the turbo dice. Turbo dice allow you to roll 4 dice at once, but it makes you miss any of the spaces along the way, including the lap line, boo, the star, and the shops. The Kamek shop has green pipes, dueling gloves, creepy dice, chomp calls, plunder chests, and traps. Every item on this board can be a good choice, they just have different investments and payoffs. The star traps take up precious inventory space and are a huge time investment since you could be moving instead, but the payoff is obvious. The linear board design makes them more valuable. The plunder chest is another huge investment since you could be hindering one other player from moving, and what actually could be a really long stretch for them until the pit stop or shop. The chomp call works like the tower turner item from Mario's Rainbow Castle if it did its job, since there are only 2 spots a star can go on separated by a crossroad. Turbo dice are an obvious risk and reward choice that you have to make. The symmetry of the board for each of the points of interest, the finish line, shops, star, and boo, means that you always miss at least one of these. The turbo dice doesn't interact with passables after all. I think this board is a masterpiece. It's like Mario Party chess. The board is heavy on inventory management and it's simple in its execution. Since coins aren't a problem in this game, you have to focus on the real currency, inventory management, and movement. You have to item chain if you want to win. If you do want to make coins your game, then you have boo to spend them all. This board feels great. You have to focus on moving, and you could still be mean. Certain plays require certain positioning and awareness. This board is like the antithesis of the game being historically slow because it feels like you do have a major decision every turn. I don't believe Pro Mode makes enough changes to the board. The core mechanics for this board is unchanging. Maybe this board is slightly worse on Pro Mode because of the limited inventory. The freedom and star traps are the reason why this board is so great. I recommend leaving Mario, Luigi, Rosalina, DK, and Yoshi out of the pool so they become Jamboree partners. It's going to make this board have more variety since your movement is tied to your choices. So again, to reiterate, I would play as Peach, Daisy, Wario, Waluigi, or Bowser Jr. to make those unselected Jamboree buddies show up more often. This board is slightly better than Horrorland. That's the video. If you want to share your thoughts below, I will read them. I am a small channel. Give me a sub if you want to hear more from me. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a very good rest of your day.